This is Basketball Bucksline from TNT Equipment for all your construction rental needs on 610 WTVN.
And good evening and welcome. It is Basketball Bucksline. Matt McCoy, Tony White with you. There was some good last week. In fact, really good last Tuesday. We talked about last Monday night, Tony, them needing to get over the hump and beat a ranked team. And did they ever with incredible performance by Justin Arns? They scored 29. He scores 29 points. They put up 90 points, which is like 2 weeks' worth for this team, and defeat Iowa. And then the wheels kind of come off. Friday, we find out that Kaleb Wesson has been suspended. We still don't have an indication of how long he's going to be out. They go to Purdue and lose 86-51 on Saturday. What do you make of the week that was, Tony, for Ohio State basketball?
Well, first, let's look at the positives. The positive is that they got the win that we said they needed to get.
Yes.
It was a huge win against Iowa, and it wasn't just kind of you eke them and you move it on down the road. It was a convincing win.
It's as good as they've looked in a couple of months.
It really was. And I thought that it was a statement win for Ohio State in a time. It wasn't a permanent statement win, meaning, okay, we've done this now, we don't have to do anything else.
Right.
But it was a statement win saying, look, we belong in the NCAA tournament. And I think a lot of people, when you look at that score nationally, said, wow, top 25 win, you win by 20. Mm-hmm. And you score 90 points on a top 25 team that allegedly is a pretty good defensive team. Not great, but pretty good. Then you go, okay, maybe Ohio State is convincing me they belong in the NCAA tournament. So I think the week started off well. I think, as the week went on,
it got worse.
It got a lot worse.
Yep.
And, in obvious ways and in subtle ways. Here's a subtle way it got worse. We know you mentioned some of the obvious. Here's a subtle way it got worse. Iowa then decided to go, after getting beat by Ohio State, to go lose by 14 against Rutgers.
At home.
At home.
Yes.
Which makes everybody else who saw that 90-70 score for Ohio State and went, oh, yeah, that's a statement win for Ohio State. Good job. That maybe they do belong in the tournament. They go, how good.
The wheels are falling off the Iowa wagon.
Right. Is that Iowa team really a top 25 team? Maybe that explains what happened at Columbus, Ohio, as opposed to Ohio State just played that well, that Iowa's just not that good.
Well, to give a little indication of that, the national media at least may be thinking that way, Tony. They went from being 20th in the country last week in the AP poll to not only not being ranked this week, they didn't get a single vote.
Wow.
Like no one,
oh my
you know what I mean? Like no one thought, well, they just had a bad week, but they really are. They didn't get a vote.
Oh, as Archie Bunker would say, ain't that a kick in the groin?
Yes. So they've fallen hard. Wow. Now it still is on paper a good win, but to your point, you're right. If Iowa craps out and loses the rest of the games, Fran McCaffrey suspended another game after his antics, it doesn't help Ohio State. Ohio State has to help themselves.
Most definitely.
Without Kaleb Wesson, they got to find a way to win on Wednesday against Northwestern if he does or doesn't play, and then obviously the season finale against Wisconsin.
Well, let me ask you a question, Matt, because you're a lot smarter than me and all this stuff. Mr. AP voter, extraordinaire, sports director, all that stuff. It was a quad one win when Ohio State beat Iowa.
Correct.
At home.
Yes.
Does it forever stay a quad one win even though Iowa goes down, circling down the drain?
It does. Well,
is it
unless Iowa falls out of quad one, which I don't think they will.
Well, I don't know.
They have enough money in the bank.
Well, there's two ways that you could make a quad one win a quad one win. It's top 25 at home, top 75 on the road. So if Iowa drops out of the top 25,
I got what you're saying.
This quad one win, which we thought was a quad one, is no longer a quad one win.
It will go down as one at the time, but ultimately may not be.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if the committee looks at quad one wins at the time or quad one wins after the fact, or both. Because frankly, if I were on the committee, which would be a very wise decision, I would just say, if they wanted to put some wise perspective on there.
Yes.
Good call. I would be saying, look, I want to know quad 1 wins. First of all, I'd say let's get rid of this quad stuff because it's making it more complicated than ever. But anyway, I'll speak your language for a while. I want to know quad 1 wins at the time. I want to know quad 1 wins retrospectively because I want to know, okay, if I'm 10-1 against quad 1 teams at the time, but then you look back, then you look at the end of it and you say, but I'm 2-10 in quad 1 wins retrospectively. It means I played a lot of teams that at the time
were good,
mm-hmm. or at least thought to be good, but in the end weren't so good.
There is something to be said for that, though, because teams peak and valley at different times in the year, and all wins are not necessarily equal. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
It's where you end up, though.
I agree with that.
End up.
I agree.
So if your team is playing great in November and they end up 500, should that quad 1 win in November when they're 5th ranked in the country be a quad 1 win when they end up 15-15?
Well, you and I were talking last week when we were previewing the Iowa game. I mentioned, hey, they're on quite a roll. But if you look at the way they've been winning, they've been incredibly fortunate.
Right.
And is that going to get exposed at some point? Or are they just having one of those years, which happens sometimes, where Jordan Bohannon goes crazy, wins a bunch of games for him, and they just keep doing it?
And now we know the answer.
I'm starting to feel like they've been exposed. like the wheels have come off. They were very fortunate to beat a lot of not great teams, barely.
Look,
and now it's going the other way.
I'll say this, and I'm here to say what I think. I'm not a big fan of Fran McCaffrey. I never have been. He to me, he finds ways to undercoach his teams.
Mm-hmm.
His teams tend to underperform their talent. I can't remember an Iowa team that had talent and you go, wow, look at them playing way above their talent level. It's always seemed like when I watch an Iowa team under Fran McCaffrey that they're struggling to play up to expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And they never either they barely get there or they never quite do. And I think, the whole – my son gets a technical, so I get a technical like this is third grade T-ball.
And then he goes off on the officials in the tunnel and he gets suspended.
What's all that about, Fran? Gather yourself, big guy.
Yep.
That didn't make any sense to me. So, look, I would not be surprised in the end if you see Iowa take the gas pipe for the rest of the year because right now they are in trouble. And, they're starting to slide down that list. Maybe they're going to be that 8th team or the 9th team that doesn't make the NCAA tournament. It'd be a shock if it came to that. But right now,
if they don't win another game or something, yeah.
They were 21-6. They're 21-8. I'm sorry, right now. Is that enough in and of itself? If you just kind of take the gas pipe for the rest of the year,
lose 2 games this week, lose first round of the Big Ten tournament.
Well,
yeah.
I can answer that question from personal experience. When my senior year team was 11th in the country, and we lost 6 straight. Or 7 straight, whatever the heck it was. I blacked out in one of those games.
And you ended up in the NIT.
NIT. We were 11th in the country.
Mm-hmm.
We had a top 15 RPI at the time. And, you lose enough straight, and everybody starts going, and by the way, we weren't losing to chumps. We were losing to pretty good teams. Rutgers?
Yeah, I know.
Home by doubles?
Yep.
Wow.
Rutgers is a lot better, but that's a bad.
I don't care.
At home, you can't lose to them.
You can lose to Rutgers at home on a last-second jump shot or a very, very tight game. You cannot get blown out by Rutgers at home coming off a blowout on the road that hurt you.
Yep.
You've got to respond to that, and Iowa did not respond, and that tells people something.
You can respond to Tony White and I. It is Basketball Bucksline. We're with you till 8 o'clock. Phone lines are open at 614-821. WTVN, that's 821-9886 or 1-800-610-WTVN. Or, as many of you have already done, I'm on Twitter. Always have my Twitter page open. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio and have a couple of comments already. Obvious question for you. This is from Barry. Obvious question for you. How can Justin Arnn score 29 points one night and take only one shot the next when Ohio State was obviously shorthanded?
I'm just telling you, this is yet another example, so many examples of why I have to believe Chris Holtmann is on a first-name basis with the guy who runs the liquor store nearest his house.
Or whatever his vice might
or
be.
Or whatever that vice might be. But as I'm telling you, I mean, how do you coach in that environment? I feel bad for the guy because how do you plan game to game, your game plan and your strategy to win the game, when you got a guy who goes off for 29 and then the next game he gets off one shot and doesn't score?
Well, could some of that be the absence of Kaleb Wesson?
No.
In the Purdue game?
No.
Well, because you have to honor him on the inside, and all of a sudden, Justin Arns, who probably wasn't on Iowa's, I'm trying to make sense of it, Tony. I agree with you. It's a crazy stat.
No.
But he wasn't on Iowa's, probably scouting report, or was, but now, whatever. Arns, he's going to play about 8 minutes. And he does what he does. Well, all of a sudden, Purdue's very aware of him, and they're not giving him any space. I don't know. It is bizarre, though. It really is.
Look, I get that he wasn't on Iowa's scouting report, and he suddenly was on Purdue's. That's for sure. So there's certainly going to be more attention to him. But to just be shut down completely, what that is that was Purdue's defense extending on everybody. And Ohio State unable to really do anything on the perimeter with those guys. I'll take back a little bit. I agree with you, yes, not having Kaleb Wesson in the game. Because, look, what Ohio State was missing so bad against Purdue was the ability to penetrate.
Mm-hmm.
There was zero penetration going on. They'd throw the ball around the perimeter. They tried, but they were trying to do it one-on-one. And Purdue's too good to beat one-on-one. You've got to have more complicated sets and strategies to beat Purdue and to get the penetration you need to create movement to then get people, kick the ball out and get people wide open for jump shots. So all game against Purdue, what you saw was Ohio State jump shooters shooting over defenders challenging them. Ball, hands in your face. Those are tough jump shots to make, which Ohio State did not make. And so there are multiple ways to penetrate. You can penetrate with the pass, the cutters. You can penetrate with the dribble. You can penetrate by getting the ball to a post guy and forcing teams to double team the post guy, which then allows you to kick the ball out. It creates the same movement from the defense, except it's not a ball handler.
Mm-hmm.
They did miss that with Kaleb Wesson. He wasn't in there so they could penetrate with the post pass, cause the defense to react to that and give guys wide open shots. But in the end, that's both a limitation on their ability to penetrate and a limitation on those guys' ability to make jump shots, because there were some open shots against Purdue. It's just everybody and their grandmother stopped making shots.
Yep. I got a bunch more social media questions, but before we get to the break, because I don't want to make him wait through the break, Mike called in. Mike, thanks for waiting. You're up on Basketball Bucksline.
Yeah, I don't know the answer for sure, but Tony was talking about, is it a quad one win, and is it always a quad one win?
Right.
And if
Yep.
the team falls in the ranks, I would think that has to be true, that it's always a quad one win, because in the reverse, I mean, if you beat a team early in the season and they go on to be number one towards the end of the season, it's that's not considered winning over the number one team. You follow me?
I understand what you're saying. If you play
unranked,
I'll give Purdue, for example. Purdue, for a large portion of the season, was not ranked because they struggled early, but now they're a top 10 team. And if you beat them early in the year, I certainly think it helps your strength of schedule and your resume, though, because now it looks like a really, really good win. But I know what you're saying, that at the time it wasn't a ranked team.
On a top 10 team.
Yeah. It all, and thanks for the call, Mike. It all comes out in the wash, though, I think. I think the committee is.
I think Mike's right. I'm willing to bet that if you beat a quad one team, that counts forever as a quad one win. But I'm willing also to bet that the committee looks retrospectively at your quad one record and says, I want to know everybody who's a quad one team now. So I want to know what your record. Okay, great. You beat UC in the first game of the season. What's UC now? Oh, and if UC is like 4-23, even though they were quad one at the time because we thought they were a top 25 team.
Yep.
Well, guess what? You're gonna have this quad one record, but your revised quad one record is this, and we're gonna keep that in mind if you're tied with somebody else.
Well, to Mike's point, UC is probably helping Ohio State right now, big time.
What else also helped Ohio State this weekend?
Creighton,
exactly.
Creighton upset Marquette,
going to Marquette and whipping up on Marquette a little bit at Marquette, a top 10 team. That is a big win for Creighton. That pushes them up in the standings and gives Ohio State a even better strength of schedule.
I'm so nuts about this, looking at the NCAA tournament bubble. Little things like UCLA winning in overtime against USC, and now they're top 4 in the Pac-12. Yes. I mean, the Pac-12 is horrible, but every little bit of data point when you're on the bubble, I think helps.
And Ohio State is squarely on the bubble.
I think they're in right now, but if they don't win one of these 2 games, if Kaleb can't play, they're going to be in
when we come back,
trouble.
We can talk. But I'm telling you, I think they're on the bubble. All these projections, I still think Ohio State is on the bubble. I think the committee looking at this right now does not know if Ohio State's in the tournament. They don't know.
Oh, I agree with that.
I mean, I really think that this team. Right now, the majority of people making the decision are saying, I get that they have a chance to make this tournament. They're going to have to prove to me over the last 4 or 5 games that they deserve to be here.
All right, we're late for a break because I wanted to get Mike's call. We'll be back with more after this. Take some more of your phone calls. A bunch of you have tweeted at me. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. Back after this, Basketball Bucksline on Sports Radio 610 WTVN. Back on Basketball Bucksline, Matt McCoy, Tony White with you. Getting a lot of tweets about the basketball Buckeyes, their NCAA chances, what happened Saturday at Purdue. And I am at Matt McCoy Radio if you'd like to get in on that. Phone line's open too, 614-821-WTVN. Let's take another call from Richard. Richard, thanks for waiting. What's up?
Hi, Matt. How are you? Hi,
good,
Tony.
good.
Hey, I want to put another spin on this quad one thing.
Yeah.
How do you know that Ohio State didn't break Iowa's spirit by the way they beat them?
Yeah, and that's
you see.
There are. I believe that there are, Tony, and you can speak to this. There are like good times to catch a team.
Oh yeah,
and to that point, your coach gets suspended, and did Rutgers maybe catch Iowa at the right time after Ohio State, as Richard said, maybe broke their spirit?
Maybe, but if your spirit is that fragile, you don't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament to begin with.
It's got to be a little tougher.
You got to be a lot tougher than that. I mean, like I said, you can go lose to
Tony?
Rutgers. Yeah.
Everybody can't be you.
That's true. That's a very, very good point. And, seriously, that's very true.
Yes.
Great Maharaji Tony. Hey, I respect you. I think you're a hell of a guy. But, there's something about sports. There's just some teams, when I played some teams, we just destroyed them. It just took anything away from them that they thought they had.
Yeah. Well,
it's not a matter.
Yeah, how do you figure stuff? I mean, we talked about the Justin Arns thing, 29 points and then 1 shot the next game. It's the beauty of college sports that you never know. And Richard, thanks for the call because I'm running into the bottom.
I'm not big on that coach for not playing him. I mean, there's a whole other issues going on there. I mean, he doesn't seem to manage his talent. There was his rotation, everything. I mean, I can't figure him out.
Well, I don't know. What do you think about that? That we didn't see enough of Justin Arns before that, and that was in there waiting. And Richard, thanks for the call. I just want to let Tony answer before we hit the break.
I'll say this: playing Justin Arns, starting Justin Arns, struck me as a desperation play. I mean, because you don't just suddenly say, "Okay, I'm changing the starting lineup in late February, early March, and I'm putting in a freshman who's never really played a lot of significant minutes." That to me was almost a desperation move with a coach who's saying, guys, we're not going to make it to the finish line if we don't have somebody who can get out there and make some shots. Because right now we're not making any shots. So who's our best shooter? That kid? Okay. He hasn't played much? Okay. Don't care. Get him out there. Let's see if he can make some shots. He made a bunch of shots. But what happens? Those types of players, you can't count on them game in and game out.
I mean, especially he's a freshman.
You just can't.
Yeah.
And it's not the kid's fault. He's never been to Purdue in his life. And I'm telling you right now, I remember walking into Mackey Arena my freshman year and going, holy crap.
Yep.
That is a tough place to play basketball.
Especially that Purdue team had just found out that Indiana had beaten Michigan State. So we win today, boys. We are in first place by ourselves with a week to go.
And they played
in
like
the Big Ten.
And Ohio State was just learning and coming to grips with the fact that
they didn't have Kaleb Wesson. Yep. And so you start Justin Arns, Jaden Ledee, and Luther Muhammad, 3 freshmen in that environment, which with an average Purdue team is difficult.
And, Matt, a starting lineup that has never played together before. They're starting. Get out there, kid. Play. People don't understand that chemistry is a big part of this, and you're rolling out a starting 5 who's never started a game before in their lives. That is a tall order for somebody to be on the road at Purdue in an environment where Purdue needs that win to win the Big Ten championship. I mean, it was a very difficult set of cards that Chris Holtmann and his team had to play with, and they got burned.
Yes, they came up with a pair of deuces.
Yes.
While Purdue had a royal flush.
Yes.
All right, we got a break for the bottom of the hour. Kevin, you're going to be next. Again, I will get to a bunch of your tweets that you've sent to me. I'm at Matt McCoy Radio, Basketball Bucksline, last half hour after this on News Radio 610 WTVN.
Basketball Bucksline from TNT Equipment on 610 WTVN.
And we are back. Matt McCoy, Tony White, Buckeyes with 2 games this week at Northwestern on Wednesday. The home finale, the regular season finale, on Sunday at 4:30 against Wisconsin. We do not know whether Kaleb Wesson is going to be available for one or neither of those games. I will say this, and I don't know, and I don't want to get into what he did. There's a lot of rumors out there, whatever. But my guess is that he's not going to play the rest of the week. And the reason that is my guess is because in the past, I'm thinking back to, remember Mark Loving's mysterious suspension, his junior year or whatever. Last year, Cam Williams, when the suspensions have been athletic department suspensions, they've been 3 games. Cam's was, Mark Loving's was, and this was an athletic department suspension. What it was, I don't know. But we'll find out. Chris Holtmann, and no one is saying what it is. And hopefully, for Ohio State's sake, it is just 1 game.
Yeah.
Remember, Kaleb was suspended a game earlier this year for a team suspension, not living up to expectations. This is an athletic department one, which leads me to feel it just feels a little bit different.
It's more formal.
Yes.
The team suspension thing is, you break some team rules. Athletic department suspension tends to be more formal. You break rules that apply across sports, not just to one sport.
Right.
And so I don't think we should speculate what those rules are. We just know that he violated whatever it is, and it's probably more than 1 game. I got to believe it's going to be at least 2, probably 3.
Question on Twitter from Dave. With the absence of Kaleb Wesson, why did Ohio State not start Kyle Young? Young has more experience than Ledee, although Ledee did play very well. Let's see. Kyle Young, 2 for 3, 8 rebounds, 7 points in 17 minutes. I can answer this way. Chris Holtmann mentioned to us last week in interviews or a couple of weeks ago that Kyle Young, right now, coming off of the stress fracture, can't practice. And they had a choice of whether, hey, you can practice him, but he may not be available for games, or you can have him for games because he's not back all the way. So his conditioning isn't where it is, and he doesn't feel comfortable starting him under those circumstances.
Well, I think that's a very good reason. Another good reason is that Kyle Young, tends to get into foul trouble. And do you want to throw him out there and to start the game and risk that he's going to be in foul trouble and you're not going to get that oomph off the bench? I think Kyle Young has given them a very good lift off the bench. Another thing, we talk about this roles. Kids get comfortable with roles. I think Kyle Young, since he's been coming off the bench, has given Ohio State a lift off the bench. And I think he's become comfortable with that role of coming in and not sure what's happening. Am I coming in because Kaleb Wesson's in foul trouble? Am I coming in to play the 4 spot with Kaleb Wesson? He seems to be versatile in that regard and able to come in and just handle that situation like he's fit that role very well. Mm-hmm. I think that's another reason is Chris Holtmann wanted to keep him in that role where he's had success. And I think he had another good game. I mean, 17 minutes, 7 points, 8 rebounds against Purdue.
Yep.
That's a great game.
That's what's the beauty of that kid is you can almost write down his stat line before the game starts.
And you
know what you're going to get.
And you can win basketball games with a kid like Kyle Young coming off the bench and giving you that level of production. That is excellent production for 17 minutes for a sophomore coming off the bench. Now, and you talk about Ledee. Hey,
I got another question. Does Ledee deserve more minutes after what he did?
Well, guess what? He's going to get them because unless somebody grows 8 inches overnight.
Yes.
Jaden Ledee is our starting center because we ain't nobody left. So he's going out there. He's getting more minutes. And I think his production at Purdue was good. I mean, he played hard. He played tough. I want to see more rebounds from a kid who's playing center and playing 22 minutes and only getting 3 rebounds. Hey, get your nose in there a little bit harder. Mm-hmm. But he got himself to the free throw line. He made free throws because he was playing aggressive, and he's got some physicality to him. So he was going at the rim with physicality and getting those bumps, but going through them. I thought he played a pretty darn good basketball game and much more. I mean, 16 points. Who would have predicted that?
Mm-hmm.
Jaden Ledee's going to go in there and have 16 points against Purdue. I wouldn't have predicted that. So I think you got to say, nice job, kid. If we would have won, if Ohio State would have won that game, Ledee would have been a reason why they won it. He was not a reason why they lost that game. And for a freshman making his first start
was. Yep.
On the road in Purdue against a top 15 team, and you are a positive factor to why the team should win, and you're the leading scorer, chalk that one up as a success.
Getting back to Jason's question, though, about Kyle Young not starting, and I mentioned that Coach Holtman said that Kyle can't practice. How problematic is that, not only for him but for the team? How big of a deal is that when you're only available for games at this time of the year? I would think that is – I mean, you got to do what you got to do to have the kid. You want it, but I would think that is not conducive to growth as a team, is it?
It's not, and, there's a balance. There's always a line between how much do you want to practice a kid and wear him down, how much do you need him to be out there. I think it would be less an issue if this was a veteran-laden team with everybody who had roles and everybody knew what those roles were. And the practices were really to reinforce some of the things that you don't do well as a team and to get ready for the next game.
Yep.
To get the game plan ready and to fine-tune what you're doing. If that were the case, Kyle Young not practicing wouldn't be that big of a deal because he could mentally practice on the sidelines, be ready for the game plan, and he'd fit right into that veteran team role, and nobody would miss a beat during the game.
Using a football analogy, when J.T. Barrett had the knee injury and missed the entire week of practice before the Big Ten title game, that was probably not nearly as big of a deal because he was a 4-year starting quarterback. Had it been a freshman quarterback that missed the entire week of practice.
And, we have a young team all around you. And, in practice, this team is growing and changing every day because they're that young. And for him not to be a part of that means that the changes are not going to be as smooth when you get it onto the court because it's going to be different. Instead of the same guys clicking in practice, we click in practice as a 5, then you go out in the court in a game and you go, okay, let's get back to that rhythm that we had. Let's click like we had before in practice. Now, Kyle Young wasn't a part of that.
Right.
So he comes in and it's a different mix and it's harder to get in that rhythm. And, for a young team, boy, that rhythm is very important. It's hard to hit when you have that young of a team.
Before we hit the break, let's get Kevin, who's been on hold for a while. Kevin, thanks for calling Basketball Bucksline. What's up?
Thanks. 2 observations. The first one is, and I'm a huge Buckeyes fan, but the first one is it really felt like Iowa played about the worst defense I've seen all year by a team.
They really did. There were a lot of open shots. Yep.
Oh, my goodness gracious. There were whole sides of the court that were open. But I think that, to me, that's indicative of the second point. The observation is we really don't shoot very well. And in the Big Ten, when they play great defense, we don't have guys that can really make their own shot, that can shoot really well right now. And our offense really doesn't support it very well either. And so I think Iowa was the anomaly because of the fact we were able to do well because they are so bad on defense. And Purdue was, we were down our best player, and we already get challenged when we're playing a really good defensive team.
Yeah, in terms of the Iowa game, Kevin, there were a lot of open shots, but we've seen Ohio State, Tony, miss a lot of open shots. They were making shots, which, to Kevin's point, maybe that was the anomaly. Iowa's strategy may have been, all right, they're one of the worst shooting teams in the league. It's okay. Let's try to force some turnovers. I don't know, but to Ohio State's credit, that night they were knocking down shots, and Justin Arns was front and center with that.
Yeah, I thought that Arns was really the reason why Ohio State was able to make as many shots as it did. Not just because he made shots, but because when he started making shots, it had two effects. One, it caused everybody else to loosen up and say, okay, this guy is on. This is great. We're having a great time.
It really is contagious, isn't it?
It is. His shooting is very contagious. And when you see some guy popping it like that, you go, boy, I can't wait to get my shot off because everybody's making. We got it going tonight. The second effect it had was it caused Iowa to go, who is this guy? And how do we account for him? Because they haven't practiced. They haven't practiced to account for this kid. And so now you got a variable in there that you haven't practiced for, you have no preparation for. You got McCaffrey on the sidelines trying to coach to a new team that they haven't prepared for. Because Justin Arns made Ohio State a completely different basketball team than what they prepped for and saw on tape. So now you're going against a new team, and the defense started to go, okay, how do we account for this? And they started letting guys behind them. They started letting guys get jump shots, transition baskets. And so that disruption that Arns created gave Ohio State open shots, and Ohio State made open shots, which we have not seen them do regularly throughout the course of this Big Ten season.
Yeah, in the second half, Ohio State scored 54 points in that game, which is more than they scored the entire game against Purdue, is more than they scored the entire game against Michigan and Michigan State this year.
Yeah. And they shot well over 50%, I think, in the second half.
They did. They shot 57%. They had 12 assists on 15 made field goals in the second half. Right. Again, it's as well as they played. Iowa, to Keith's point, had a lot to do with it, but we've seen Ohio State have open shots like that and not make them before. They made them, and ball movement and making shots is a beautiful thing.
Yes, and I give Arntz a lot of credit because he was the catalyst that opened up all those shots, and then Ohio State players made them.
All right, we're going to take a break, our final break of Basketball Bucksline, get back to some more of your Twitter questions. I'm going to try to get in as many as I can because I'm flooded here with it. But if you want to squeeze a couple more in, I'm at Matt McCoy Radio. Phone line 2-614-821-1057. That was a Freudian slip, man. I knew I was going to do that at some point. We flip-flopped stations in the middle of the year.
The over-under line is 2.
614-821-WTVN. 9886. Back after this, Basketball Bucksline, a turnover by me. Back after this on 610 WTVN. Final segment of Basketball Bucksline. Again, a huge week for a Buckeye basketball team that at 18-11 and 8-10 in the Big Ten is they're in right now, according to projections, although Tony feels that's...
Well, in now. It's like saying I'm in November. I'm in.
Right.
They were in after they beat Cincinnati in the first game of the season. They were in the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, there was still a whole season to play.
Remember the first net rankings came out in November after they had beaten Cincinnati and Creighton, and they were 5-0, and they were number one. They had the most quality wins. Yeah.
Right.
So
they've been number one overall seed. Yeah. Look.
Not anymore.
It's to say Ohio State is in right now, if the world stopped and the tournament was selected today, is probably right.
Correct.
However, the world ain't stopping, and there's games to be played.
And with the uncertainty of your best player.
And with Indiana surging. Indiana.
What if Indiana wins 2 more games this week?
I'm telling you, if Ohio State cans out against Northwestern and doesn't play well and loses to Wisconsin, and Indiana wins 2 more games this week, I think you're going to see Indiana flip with Ohio State, and Ohio State is going to be the 9th team from the Big Ten on the outside looking in. I really believe that. And it's going to be a Big Ten tournament battle to see who's going to advance far enough to prove that they deserve to be the 8th team.
Let me try to go through some of these tweets at me. I'm at Matt McCoy Zone. Mike says, I can take losing to Purdue, but it felt like this team gave up, and that's on Chris Holtmann.
Well, first of all, Mike, we never take losing to anybody, ever. And second, I didn't see this team give up. I saw this team get demoralized. Now, there is a difference between being demoralized and giving up. I've been on teams that have given up in a game, and I've been on teams that have not given up in games and been demoralized because they've just been overwhelmed. There is a big difference between the two. It looked to me like against Purdue, they were demoralized, not giving up, but demoralized. That being said, the person who knows this team the best decided to play Joey Lane for 6 minutes.
At the start of the second half. Yeah.
And that is a strong commentary that Chris Holtmann thought this team gave up. They were not just demoralized, but they said, alrighty then. Can somebody warm that bus and that plane up? Because I'm getting the heck out of here.
Was that a message to somebody on the team? Or
that's a message to everybody. I'm telling you, that is not a message to just one person. If you're sitting on that bench and I don't care if you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior, and you've played it all, and Chris Holtmann sends Joey Lane out there. No slam on Joey Lane whatsoever. But if you're sending that guy out there before me, if you have any type of heart and pride as a player, you're not happy about that. Mm-hmm. You're pissed about that because those are your minutes, and he's making a statement to everybody watching this game, the entire country, your girlfriend, your parents, your friends, your high school coach, that you're not good enough to play over a walk-on in a game on national television.
Yep.
That is a personal statement to everybody who is on that bench, and they better hear it. They better hear it because Chris Holtmann is an experienced coach. He did that for a reason.
JC says, don't know what Kaleb Wesson did to earn his suspension, but very disappointing with 3 games left in the season to have your best player leave the team. What would the message be from his teammates to Kaleb Wesson who let them down?
Well,
would there be, I'm curious, would there be conversations with players like, are they putting their arm around him and say, hey, you'll be back? Are they pissed at him? Or what do you think's going on?
On a experienced senior-dominated team, to a sophomore who's a good sophomore, who's an important part of the team, there are 2 reactions. The first one is, what's wrong with you?
Right.
And people getting up in his face about, look what you're doing. This is my senior year, and you're going to go do whatever you did and jeopardize my senior year. I thought I and this team meant more to you than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then after he hurts for a while on that, you come back to him and said, dude, we need you. You got to take this and all that you're feeling right now, and you got to turn it positive. And when you get back out in the court, you got to be an absolute animal out there, because that's the only way you're going to make it up to me and everybody else on this team. So those are the 2 on a senior-dominated team. Now, is that happening with this team? I don't know, because the senior on this team,
CJ, yeah,
is not in a position to exactly command a lot of respect from what he's done on the court. I mean, CJ Jackson is really not having a
Your
good
seniors
year.
Are CJ, Keyshawn Woods, and Joey Lane.
And Keyshawn Woods hasn't been here that long.
Right.
Joey Lane's a walk-on. So the guy who's going to have that conversation is probably CJ Jackson, and the problem with that is CJ Jackson has not been good. And it's harder for a young guy or a guy who's played at a much higher level than CJ Jackson to hear those types of words from a guy who's taking the gas pipe with senior year. Because the quick response is, dude, it ain't my fault.
Right. Dan on Twitter, really feel like Wednesday's game is a must-win. Already have a bad loss to Rutgers, can't have another one to Northwestern.
Well, look, we're beyond bad loss time. I mean, Ohio State needs the win. I mean, I don't care. Yes, it would be a bad loss, but more importantly, it would be the loss of an opportunity to get another W. And I think they have to get this win. They have to get this win. They lose to Northwestern.
If they lose to Northwestern, Wisconsin becomes, I think,
massive.
I think you win these 2 games, stop the conversations. They're easily in.
They're in the NCAA tournament.
If they lose to Northwestern, they damn well better beat Wisconsin.
They better beat Wisconsin. Because if they lose both games and they go in the Big Ten tournament, they're going to have to win, in my opinion, at least 2 games to get in the NCAA tournament. And that's especially true if Indiana wins this week in their games.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm telling you, Indiana right now is in that they're like 8 or 9 away from getting in, and a couple more wins can flip them with Ohio State if Ohio State loses, has a bad loss against Northwestern, and doesn't beat Wisconsin.
We do not know whether Kaleb Wesson is going to play. My suspicion, again, is that he won't against Northwestern. If my suspicion is correct, going into this Northwestern game, how does the strategy change? They got to, for all their struggles, they got a pretty good big guy in Derek Pardon down there. What does Ohio State have to do minus Kaleb Wesson to get a win against Northwestern?
They got to find a way to penetrate. I mean, this Ohio State team has not penetrated well off the dribble at all. They have not shown the ability to square up and beat somebody one-on-one and pass it off to someone. They've used Kaleb Wesson to do that. Somebody's going to have to learn to penetrate. They're going to have to run their offense with precision to get passing lanes with people cutting to the basket. If they don't do that, if it's a perimeter game only, Ohio State's in trouble because Northwestern can beat Ohio State on a perimeter game only, especially on the road.
Very quick comment about Wisconsin, who makes it's like going to the dentist office. How do you have to beat a Wisconsin team?
Beatable team this year. Keep Ethan Happ under control, and a Wisconsin team getting beat on the backboard much more frequently. They're a vulnerable team, in my opinion. They're not playing extremely well. Ohio State can beat Wisconsin. It'd be better with Kaleb Wesson. But they can beat Wisconsin without him. They're just going to have to play a very good perimeter game. All
right. That's Tony White. I'm Matt McCoy. We're back with you next Monday for Basketball Bucksline, and we'll get you ready for the Big Ten tournament. Thanks for joining us on 610 WTVN.